Hi, welcome back. It's Laura from Hyperstamper. This is a very, very special original plate from the 1890s book called In Farm and Field. I've used plates from this book. As you can see, this book is kind of a disaster, but the plates are pristine. They're fantastic. So this one, it's so special to me. I love birds. I love antique plates on birds. And down, it's by an artist named Gia McKelly, and it says, his sweet song may be heard at intervals all through the night. And I just think it is beautifully aged. It's on a book that's also an antique book. And this is not a damaged spine. It's actually, I added that decor to the spine to make it aged even more. And I added this vintage jewelry. And this is from an old vintage candlestick here to the side. They're all removable, so you can move them around or reuse them. I think it's lovely, and let me take you on a little tour of this beautiful book. This is a junk journal filled with original, authentic, antique paper and vintage ephemera. There's nothing commercial in here. The only thing that is not vintage is the dyed papers that I have added. So this here is a little insert. It's from the original book on Samuel Taylor Coleridge and his poetic works. And here is a really fun photo from the 1930s of a couple. It looks like they took the picture at the wrong time, but they were just goofing around. So I love that because they used to pose for so long for photos because the exposure took a long time to set. That's why they don't smile in a lot of old photos, because smiling would ruin the exposure time, which is sometimes about 10 seconds. Here's a little book that I added here with some vintage wallpaper and lace on it, just for journaling. And there is a vintage recipe in there. And then when we get into the other signatures here, we have an antique postcard. And this one is from 1940s, which I love. And then a 1950s bingo card, which are just so much fun to have. You can journal on them. You can use them in your art and media work. Here's another page from a vintage Victoriana furniture book that I have. And I love the prints in there. Another antique journaling page here. The pockets are made out of all kinds of fun antique ephemera. This is from 1950s Theatre World magazine. And this is from a Polish embroidery book. 1950s receipt, 1938 Paris, France almanac page from October. That's double-sided, so 2 of the almanac pages in there, or dates. And there's just a fun children's book page. Some lovely child over the last 100 years has taken upon themselves to color it. There's more of that embroidery plate from a book. And lovely Arbor Day page from a children's book from the 20s, Birdhouse Day, which I thought kind of went with the theme of the book, as well as this hummingbird, vintage bird watchers book log page that I did a bit more tea dyeing on. And then some antique book page envelopes here. And here's a little flip open from an antique book page. And in here is part of the jacket of an antique book. Isn't that cool? So that's just a little fun place for you to journal on and hide things in. Vintage botanicals page from the 60s, 1950s stamp collector's book page. And look at this fun little page, a little mischievous kitten here. I love it. It was colored. Look at this child even put down some colors here with their crayons to see which colors, how the colors looked on the paper. I love that. And then just a little journaling card here. And again, really fun ephemera. Look at these woodpeckers on here. Just terrific. I actually get requests for woodpeckers every so often. This is just a lovely piece of vintage doily. It was actually a bread basket bread doily to keep bread buns warm. And a 1930s ledger sheet here, all original, of course. 1928 Billboard magazine page. Look at the Cupid doll advertisements and all the fun things that you could order if you were having a carnival or a fair, all that fun stuff from the 20s in vaudeville. Vintage plate out of a American Bird book. And in here, in this little floating pocket here, if I can pull that off, is a little wraparound, and then a plate here from 1902 from Currier and Ives. It's called The Mill Dam at Sleepy Hollow. And on the back is some antique paper and another little spot in here with antique paper for you to journal on. Isn't that cool? And then this is a little wraparound there with the vintage wine label. And I just did that with a vintage label maker and just a really old little piece here from 1899 newspaper that I put on a sticker backing so it wouldn't crumble more. So much fun. And just a 1950s newspaper ad in here, and some really cool pattern paper down here, pattern tissue, and Canadian birch bark, which I love to use whenever I can. And look at this cool thing. Learn Spanish in only 15 minutes a day. Just listen to this record. You could order that for pennies. There's a really cool plate from a children's book. American 1955 Atlas map book. More antique paper, antique paper, antique paper. A vintage canasta scorecard for journaling on. You can lift that up and journal on the back as well. And that brings us to the end. So this beautiful book is going on Etsy now. It's hyperstamper.etsy.com. I hope you'll subscribe so you can see them before they hit Etsy, and you'll get a first shot at purchasing them and seeing all my other fun journals. Thanks for visiting. Bye for now.